We had, up until quite recently, that my experience that I've been talking about of being able to be out and run around was almost standard. You know, it was standard issue in the United States of America and in many other places. Europe's been a slightly different because its population density is a little different, but they still had, for a long time, children having ways of getting out from underfoot and having these developmental spaces and having some connection to nature. But what ended up happening was that it was a combination, I think, of several things unfolding all at once. One was how we did the built environment, like, how we patterned our landscape. We started to build more and more suburban areas, for example, in which we mowed down all nature and we basically filled it with privatized space. Everything was either somebody's front yard or backyard. And if it wasn't, it was the park. And the park was not nature. It was a subjugated landscape. What I mean by that is it had been like mowed down of everything wild and it had been made completely safe. And in that sense of now it's just a green lawn and some, benches and a couple of trees that we happen to like, all neatly manicured. So yes, it's better than like being in like a concrete, concrete only
jungle.
space, but it's still not. It does not express the richness of interconnections that nature does. So I call it subjugated nature because it basically reflects this human idea of making nature into a machine. It's like, oh, that nature is messy. Let's fix it. We will mow it all down. We'll get rid of the things we don't like because we don't like snakes and we don't like mosquitoes and, all of which have very critical ecological reasons for being in the chain of interrelationships. We don't like those. So we'll kill all those off. We don't like the quote weeds because we decided we don't like those. We like grass. So we'll make the whole thing a monoculture of grass, and then we'll have to do all this maintenance work to try to keep it that way because nature doesn't want that. Nature realizes that a grass monoculture in a temperate region where I live is degenerative, right? It will degrade the soil, right? And then we will only allow certain trees and we'll prune them and shape them and we'll make the whole experience. We'll put sidewalks through so you don't even have to walk on the grass, right? That we'll call that a park, and that's where you go for your nature connection. That's what we've done. Realize that when I'm saying I was out running around through the woods, that's what we called them when I was little, right? It was wild forest. It wasn't somebody's idea of a park. We didn't have here in the area I'm living, we've got this thing called Kids Kingdom down that way, which is a playground for the kids. And of course, it's this completely structured environment. Everything that they play on is a built thing, slides and blah, blah. And it has a child-safe surface underneath, right? There's nothing natural in it. Everything is artificial. And it's got like this fencing all the way around it and an entranceway. And what you do is the parents drive their kids there, they get them out, they walk down a sidewalk and in the gate, and then close the gate behind them and say, now you can play. This is, to me, they of course, all the machines are supposed to, and devices are supposed to create an enriched environment. To me, this is an impoverished environment. Everything here is simple and linear. The message is that you're playing in a world in which everything around you should be simplified and linearized. And all risk should be eliminated. You should not be taking even managed risks, right? So there you go. And I see that that's what parents now, it's like we've destroyed the wild spaces that children can walk out their door and get to. And Richard Liv in his book documents how that's happened. We have created a culture in which allowing your child to take a managed risk will get the police called on you, right? Yes, I have, a number of friends who have, they've wanted to try to raise, quote, free-range children to some small degree, like let the child just go down the street, a few hundred feet, right? Had that case where the police were called because a 13-year-old was by himself without a parent a few hundred yards from his house. Okay? And of course the answer is, oh, what are you thinking, letting your child go off by himself? I'm like, 13-year-old is not a child. It is an artifact of modern culture that we call a 13-year-old a child. You start seeing that at 13 and 14-year-old in many indigenous cultures, they're going through the rite of passage into manhood, right? And they're treated as an adult because they're actually, yes, they're still going developmentally through the ability to get into complete abstraction, but in that place, they're being pushed into starting to act more like an adult, and they're off and they're doing things and they're going out by themselves on major expeditions in many indigenous cultures. They're traveling, miles and miles and miles away from home on these, on tasks for the community. And here we are calling the police. So I think there's this whole cultural change in which we're not allowed, and we have to actually invent words like a free range kid, right? Oh, and by the way, this 13-year-old had his cell phone on him so he could call for help if he needed it, right? You call back and say, I'm 300 feet from house, help, And here I was at 7 going miles away from home on my bike, right? With no phone. My whole generation, there was a lot of us who did that. And I mean, I'm not trying to be into that mode of like, well, in the good old days, this is how we did it. It's not where I'm trying to go. I'm just trying to say that this is culturally the change. And I think that there are deep developmental differences that emerge. What I do know is that now I'm talking to college professors that I work with, and they're telling me that the incoming college freshmen that are arriving are not psychologically prepared to be on their own. And these are professors that have been teaching 20, 30 years, right? They're saying this has been changing. I've been watching this. Our incoming freshmen now are not psychologically, emotionally, or even logistically capable of taking care of themselves. They don't know how to. They don't, and every time they get into a little bit of this, they're literally on the phone home to mom or dad or whoever, grandparent or moms or dads or whoever, right? Saying, help, rescue me, right? I think this has something to do with this whole change that I'm talking about. So I'm not saying that we need to go and all of a sudden say, oh, let's just throw the kids out and just let them take all kinds of crazy risks. No, I'm saying that children should be allowed to take managed risks. Number 2 is we should not allow ourselves manipulated by the media into thinking that these, that the risks are way larger than they are, because that it is easy for the media to sensationalize the few cases when a child, ran into a problem. We need a balance. As a matter of fact, if I understand the statistics correct, I was more likely to be abducted in the 1970s than a child is today, right? And I think that I know that it's probably not any higher. And of course, as we know, almost all child abductions, the vast majority of them actually occur from people who know the child, like a relative or whatever, a whole different story. But, we get this whole thing about being because fear sells in media. And so we get an outsized view of that. So yeah, I think is that kind of addressing sort of where you were wanting to go with that?
Yeah, I mean, there is no directions. It's free flow. I just pose a question and see where you take it.